Hello, and welcome to another episode of UTalks. I am your host, Dr. Clavon Byrd, and I am joined today. I have such a very special guest. With me today is Roxanne Heard. Roxanne was the Teacher of the Year for the 2023-2024 school year at the Milwaukee Environmental Sciences Academy, affectionately known as MESA. Okay?
Yes.
Ms. Heard.
Hi.
Hi. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well. I'm great.
Good.
I'm not as great as you, though, because you were selected as Teacher of the Year by your peers.
Yes. I didn't even know that.
You didn't know that.
I'm surprised and so grateful.
So we broke that here, ladies and gentlemen. We broke that here. So knowing now that you were nominated, selected, and voted upon by your peers, how do you feel that with just having that honor?
Well, I'm a little shocked, to be honest, because it's like when I'm at school, I'm literally in my room. So it's like I don't congregate with a lot of people a lot of times because I'm just so focused on I have to do this. I have to make sure I get this done. I want the kids to have this ready so they can get this done today so we can work on this or whatever. So it's just very shocking. But I'm very honored that they feel like I'm such a wonderful person to give this honor to. So,
well, that goes to show you that people are always watching.
Always watching, yes.
They're always watching. And one of the key components of this podcast is that, well, really the key theme of this podcast is leadership. And what we always talk about is that when you're leading, people are watching. You may not be up front as the leader. You may not be on a pedestal as the leader. You may just be going about doing your own daily business and doing it so well that people are noticing.
Yes.
So in our conversation today, we're going to get into some of what you do so well. Okay. So we're going to get to that in a couple moments.
Okay.
Let's start with, just finding out a little bit about you. You obviously work at MESA, which is the school that is connected to ULC, Urban Learning Collaborative. Many of you may not have even known that ULC operates a school, but that school is Milwaukee Environmental Sciences Academy. So how long have you been at that school? How did you arrive there? Tell us your story.
So I had recently moved back to Milwaukee and I was looking for a job and I came across the ad and I did the interview and I was hired. And I started when the school actually started in 2013 for the first time. And I came in as a para/office assistant. So I would spend part of the day in the office and then the other half of the day I'd be in the classroom, helping out in the classroom. So as time went on, there came a time where there was a lot of turnover in the K-5 classroom. And I was like, well, if they need some help, I'll go in there and help. I don't have a problem doing that. So they were like, okay, go in there and help. And it was like, I went in there, I'm helping kids with their writing, their reading, we're playing games. And then it's like, you see some of the behaviors and you're like, okay, why are they up there on the bookshelf? Or why are they standing on the desk?
It's not gymnastics class.
We're supposed to be reading and they're fighting. So it was just trying to get a connection with these kids and these behaviors that they were having and trying to get them, because they're so small, they don't always have those conflict resolution skills yet. So It's just trying to get them to be like, okay, let's use our words, not our hands. And then, they cry a lot. So it's just trying to help them work through some of those feelings. So eventually it became my classroom. So I had built reputation and a rapport with these children, and we were able to have conversations and play and different things like that. Just to try to alleviate some of the stress that was in there. And so the principal at the time was like, have you ever thought about being a teacher? And I'm like, no, never. So she was like, well, maybe you should or whatnot. So then I learned about the program and they were like, you can do the program and you can still teach at the same time. So I was like, okay, let me get out a shot. I came from a corrections background, so it was like, okay, this is not too far. I can apply some of those skills if need be. So I went through the the ULC
That's
program.
okay. For those in the audience that may not know, ULC.
Yeah, it was formerly MTech.
Yes.
So now it's ULC. And I had a wonderful mentor when I was going through the program, and she was always there with suggestions and tips and ideas and stuff to try. So it was like she was there with me in the trenches every single day that she came. And so that was wonderful to experience. So I did that program. And then it was like I ended up teaching K-5 for like 3 years. And then I was like, yeah, that's enough for K-5. And so then I moved on to 3rd grade, and I did that for a while. And then the last 3 years, I've been teaching 4th grade.
And obviously doing a very wonderful job.
Yeah.
Now, I want to drill down on a couple of little nuggets that I heard you report on in your story. Let's talk first about how immediately in that K-5 classroom, you knew that you had to, the words that you said were build connections with the students and build rapport.
Yes.
How did you know that? Was that something you knew walking into the school from your time in corrections, or did it seem like the right thing to do at that time?
It felt more like the right thing to do at that time. Like I could have relied a little bit more on my corrections background, but I understood these are little people who don't have all that social emotional skills and the capacity to self-regulate all the time. So it's like you can't apply, because I worked with grown-ups, so I can't apply everything that I did with grown-ups to small children. So it was just like, why are you crying? Let's use our words. Do you need to go over here and take a time out? Do you need a nap, a snack? What is it that you need? And sometimes they need a dance break. Sometimes they need that extra hug or whatnot. So it's just trying to find what works for them. And then, doing the reward system sometimes, like, okay, if we can finish this, then we can go outside for an extra 10 minutes, or we can get an extra snack in the afternoon, different things like that. Or we can play Go Noodle, because they like all kind of brain breaks. So giving them that extra brain break with that wiggle time, they really enjoy that.
So now that you know that connections are sort of, it's the best way to really build those relationships with students. Do you still operate your classroom in that way, in which connections come first?
Yes. I try to get to know my students, find out what makes them tick. I reach out to my families a lot, to the parents and stuff, and I try to involve them as much as I can. Like, hey, Joey's having a hard time today. Can you give him some words of encouragement so he can turn it around? Or I'll run out to the car and like, hey, Linda had a fantastic day today. She did great. Like, she got all her work done. I try to throw that praise in there as much as I can to my scholars, and not just be like, oh my God, Johnny was doing this today. Paul was doing this today. And it was just on today. So I really try to focus on just being mindful that kids aren't going to be successful every day, but my goal is to get them to the point where they can be successful. So I don't never just be like, oh, they was horrible. They gonna come in tomorrow and be horrible. It's like, no,
brand new day.
We all get a clean slate the next day. We come, hey, how you doing today? You good? Okay, you need an extra breakfast today? I see you were struggling yesterday. So we try to, make sure you had a little extra for them the next day.
Okay. Well, audience, we're sort of getting a glimpse into the reality of why Miss Roxanne Heard was the 23-24 Teacher of the Year at her school. And I love that you built those connections. I love that you decided to do that, because research shows that not just children, not just early adults, not just elderly people, human beings and their brains crave connection. Mm-hmm. Brains crave connection to other brains, right? People crave connection to other people. That's just how we were designed and how we were built. And so I love that innately you knew that, and that you're continuing to build that practice. Let's keep drilling down, because you gave us a lot in that opening segment. You talked about going to school at the same time as you were working as a teacher and not losing your income.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
So it was, as a single parent, I have a son. So I couldn't just be like, okay, I'm just go to school and that'll be all, because we wouldn't survive that way. When we initially moved back up here, it was like I really didn't have a place to stay. I was crashing with one of my girlfriends when we first moved back here until I really started working at MESA. And then I was able to find us a place and get my car fixed because my car died. So I had to pay to get that fixed. So having that income and being able to take care of my son and us and our expenses and still go to school was, that's what I needed at that time. I couldn't just be like, oh, I'm just going to work. I'm just going to go to school. And I've never been like that. So even when I was going to school a long time ago, it was like I worked and I went to night school at the same time. So I was one of those kids who was in high school like, I'm never going to college again. I'm going to be done with school. I don't ever want to go back. But it was like, as I was out in the real world, I was seeing like, I need this college degree. I need to get these couple more dollars that I need in my life. Yeah. So I went back to school, and that's what I did. And here I am.
Well, I love your testimony about that. And if you're watching us and you feel drawn to the teaching field and you feel that that is the place where you absolutely need to be to make your impact on the world, get in touch with Urban Learning Collaborative. They will help you learn what you need to know about being a successful teacher and try to find an avenue where potentially you don't have to lose any income to go to school. You can work, in many cases, full-time as a teacher. One more nugget from that opening. You talked about the importance of mentorship. You were talking about during your studies at ULC when you were working as a teacher. ULC assigned you a mentor as part of your studies. Yes. Can you tell us about that process? Tell us about that person. Tell us what you learned.
So we were just assigned a mentor, so you never know what you're going to get sometimes. But the mentor that I had, she was wonderful. Like, she always made sure, like, if I had any questions about anything, she was right there like, hey, you can try this. This is what your lesson plan format should look like. These are the things that you need to make sure you include. And then, like, when our first round of testing came up, I was like, oh my God, how am I gonna test all these kids all by myself? And she was like, this is what you do. You just make sure you have your area set up. She walked me through everything. Like, she was there in person with me, like in the trenches with me, like getting firsthand view of what was going on. So she was able to offer like immediate feedback on like, okay, well, this didn't work. We can try this next time and we can go this route, or maybe we can have them doing this while you're over here with these kids or whatnot. So just that immediate feedback was wonderful. So you could go in and be like, okay, the next day, this is what I'm gonna plan for. This is what I'm gonna be able to get done.
Okay.
And so just being able to have her there regularly, wasn't like she came like once a week.
Yeah, define.
And then I never saw her again.
Yeah, what's regularly?
But she would literally come, and then there was no set schedule either. So I didn't know if she was supposed to come like once or twice a week, but she would literally be there 3-4 days a week. She would stay for 2-3 hours at a time. And then we'd talk on the phone if need be, or we talk via email or chat or whatever. If I had a question like, hey, can you run this through with me again? I'm not quite sure what this means. And so, she was always available whenever I needed some assistance from her. So it was wonderful.
Okay. That is wonderful. And that mentorship piece is what sets Urban Learning Collaboratives programs apart from many other programs that are developing new teachers. Being able to have a mentor walk with you daily, walk with you multiple times per week for more than just a pop-in, hi, hello, but to actually engage in the work with you. And I can tell, look, we have a teacher of the year here, voted on by her colleagues and peers. And I can't help but think that the mentoring played a role in that many years ago.
Yeah, she would bring snacks, treats, toys. It was like whatever she felt we needed, like she was always there. Like, hi, you need some extra stuff here? Like, yes, we do. Like, always.
Every teacher, yes, we do.
Yes.
Yes, we do. We don't turn stuff down. Mm-mm. All right, let's sort of talk about why you believe you were selected as Teacher of the Year for 2023 and 2024. What do you think people were noticing about what's going on in Roxanne Heard's classroom? What do you think it was?
I don't know. I would have to say probably more of the structure and the expectations when you come into Ms. Heard's classroom. We are an expeditionary learning school, so we
Okay.
roll with. We have these different levels that we work with, and we always start with crew, which is where we're coming together. We're building empathy. We're building collaboration. We're building accountability, respect with our scholars, and getting them to be able to work well with each other without so much teacher-led supervision. The goal is
Sure.
for them to be independent workers and be able to understand that they are responsible for their learning.
Okay.
And so we are trying to turn them into lifelong learners. So we start with crew every day, where we do what we call a greeting, a reading, and an initiative. So basically, we'll do some type of fun greeting with the kids. If it's the beginning of the year, we do a lot of like name introduction type activities with the kids. Like we would say like, hi, my name is Jumping John. Put an adjective with your name. And then everybody say, hi, Jumping John. And everybody's jumping at the same time. Just different activities like that. Our reading, sometimes it can be a video or a quote or a meme that ties with what we're working on that particular month.
Okay.
We tie that together. The initiative is a game that we play that builds more of that collaboration with the kids. So it's like, okay, you have to find your partner and get back to back. They like to do rock, paper, scissors wars. So it's like, okay, we start doing that, come down till we get a champion, and then everybody applauds the champion. Different things like that. Just
Sure.
that engagement with
Sure.
the kids on a regular basis.
Well, it sounds like you have a highly engaged, very community-based classroom. But I was able to do just a little bit of research on you, and I was able to figure out that in the last year or so, you had some really high literacy score results.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
which may have been part of the factor of how you were voted on as Teacher of the Year. You want to talk to us about those literacy results?
Yeah. So our classroom last year had the highest improvement in reading over the entire school. So we
Wow.
made the biggest improvement. I had a couple of kids who were like okay readers, and now they're like really good readers. So they became the highest two in our class.
Okay.
So, and I also had a young man who was reading at like a K-5 level. And by the end of the year, he was like a second grade,
Wow.
5th month. So he really improved, because at the beginning of the year, it was like, if he wanted to write something, he couldn't really write it. So we would have to do text to speech. So he would say it, and then it would type it up on a computer, and then he
Sure.
would copy it down
Sure.
that way. But now he's to the point where like he can read it and write it without assistance from the device. So he worked really, really hard this past school year and over the summer. He was like, Miss Heard, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna improve my reading. I'm gonna work real, real hard. And he works very hard
Okay.
to improve his reading.
So if I hear you correctly, you were routinely getting at least a year's growth, if not more. And it's in a couple of the cases that you talked about, double of
Yes.
a year's growth, 2 years plus growth.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay, audience, I really want you to pay attention to this piece here, okay? What strategies did you employ
So I
to
use
get 2.5 years growth
right.
to move a student from text to speech to independent reading?
So our principal incorporated DEAR at the end of the day. Drop everything and read. So every day at the end of the day, they will have 15 minutes of reading. So they could either read a book silently, or we'll play a read aloud, and they can do it that way.
Okay.
But during our school day, we have what we call our all block, where it's broken down into a couple of like 15-minute times where we were doing different activities. And one of those activities was always silent reading. So they would have to read, and then with the last 2 minutes, they would have to write 2 sentences about what they read.
Okay.
And we did that every single day. And so
Okay.
they just got in the habit of reading, just picking a book, reading. I would say keep a couple of books in your desk. We would have conversations about, well, what kind of books do you guys like? And so it was like trying to find them books that interest them,
Okay.
so that they would actually sit down and read. And I would always ask, Miss Heard, can I get a book out the special box? And I'm like, Yes, you can get a book. Make sure you take care of it. Just talking about how to handle the books and being respectful to the books. So we did that a lot. So I was able to get them some books that they were interested in, and that really helped hold them to accountable to that they're actually reading and
Sure.
not just sitting there playing around.
So kids still read.
Kids still read.
Because word on the street is they don't do it. Word on the street
Right.
is they watch TikToks. Right? So kids still read.
Kids still read. In my class, they still read.
In Ms. Heard's class, they read. So how were you able to tap into what your students want to read? Because the word on the street is that kids don't read, and it's that word on the street for a reason, because it seems that young students are losing interest in the reading material that seems to be available in classrooms. So how did you tap into that?
So initially when we first started, I got a lot of pushback from kids. I don't want to read. Reading is boring. I don't want to do that. So it was like, okay, well, what kind of books do you like? What are you interested in? And so it was like Wakanda was the big one. What was it? Dog Diaries, Mad Dog, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, graphic novel type books at their grade level, even some anime stuff that they were interested in. I was able to find appropriate anime books that they can read. So it came down to it, like they wanted more of like, I guess the comic strip. If you're used to seeing a comic strip, they were interested in books like that. The graphic novel. So I was able to get those type of materials for them. And they were able to, okay, I want to read this book. I want to read this book. So I was able to be able to like, okay, chapter books as well. Keep it in your desk. When it's time to read, pull it out. What did you read about in that chapter? Give me 2 sentences about that. So it was just built in. I had to find what they were interested in.
Okay. Well, that brings up another issue to me. We're living in a time of distressed budgets, right? There's less funding in schools. Let's face it, there's less funding in life. Right?
Yes,
you took the words right out of my mouth. There's less funding for everything that we want to do. So how are you able to put high interest reading materials into your students' hands?
So I am able to at times. Scholastic is a very good website that we use a lot. They're always having like great book sales or whatnot. They offer fundraisers for teachers to be able to post to their Facebook or Instagram. And then, I share with all my teacher friends, like, please share with your families or whatnot. If you can help contribute to this, then that helps me to be able to get books that the kids like in their classroom. Okay. So I do that. I set up different fundraisers that I can. I talk to like adults that I run into, church groups or whatnot. I let them know like, hey, if you guys could like help out, we want to get a certain number of particular books or whatnot for the class. And I was able to just do that recently. So
okay. So I know what you're thinking, audience, because I can read your mind. How can you help get high quality reading materials into Ms. Heard's students' hands? And what we will provide or have provided for you is a link to her Amazon storefront, where you can go on, choose as many or as few books as you'd like, and they will be shipped directly to Ms. Heard. Yeah. So anything else you want to say about that?
No, just any little bit helps. Our children do like to read. So anything you can help with will be fantastic. Even if it's one book, part of a book, the next part of a book, it doesn't matter. Anything that you can help us with so that we are providing materials for our children to read, because we want them to be able to read.
Each passing moment, it's very clear to me why your colleagues voted you as Teacher of the Year. It is very clear. You, in our conversation, you're bringing up, a really important topic. And I don't know if you know that you're bringing up this important topic, but what you've done is you've decreased the opportunity gap for your students, right? We all know that for marginalized students, there's this opportunity gap that exists. There's this idea that the opportunities are not always there for those students to experience and ultimately thrive. What other opportunity gaps do you see that are affecting marginalized groups today?
I think kids aren't exposed to as many things as, like we probably were when we were growing up, like trips to the museum, to the zoo, to Discovery World, Betty Brant, stuff like that. And then being that we are an expeditionary based school, we try to take real world situations from our learning and incorporate that with our scholars. So right now we're doing a poetry unit. So, and in science, we're doing an Earth features unit. So, what I try to do is arrange field experiences that tie into that. So, we're going to go to the museum. They're going to be able to see the fossils, and they're going to be able to see the different rock formations that they were in the past and tie that back to our science and be like, remember when we were talking about sandstone? Where can you find sandstone? And the kids would tell us exactly where you find it. Or if they see the fossils, they can explain how that became a fossil.
Okay.
And so we tie that back together with what we're actually studying so they can see, like, oh, this does exist in the real world. Right. Oh, I can see this in the real world. Right. So,
that reminds me of not just this generation of children, but going all the way back to being a child. I can think of, studying something, being in a classroom and wondering, why are we studying this? When am I ever going to use this? Yeah. Still don't know if I've used the Pythagorean theorem yet, but maybe one day, one day. But what I hear you saying is that you're finding you see an opportunity gap where students don't get to experience the real world and how the academics are related to the real world. And over at MESA and in your classroom in particular, you're bridging that gap.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I do fundraisers. I ask for discounts, scholarships, all that. So our Discovery World trip that we will have coming up, we were able to get a scholarship to help cover some of the costs of that, because our most expensive piece is always the bus. And for some reason, they always give you the biggest bus, and you're like, I only have 20-something kids. Can I get a smaller bus?
Right.
But, so the bus is always the biggest expense for us. And so being able to have organizations that offer scholarships to help cover that cost, because a lot of our children do not have tons of extra funds to be able to afford all these experiences that we're trying to provide. So
sure.
If I can get those scholarships, I will take them.
Sure. I think today I'm going to ask you, because I've asked you to tell a lot of stories. I'm going to ask you to tell one last story today. And that last story is, can you share a success story that highlights the impact of the work that you've done with your students over the years?
Just one.
We have time, don't we?
No.
Production is saying no, we don't. But go ahead.
A success story, it's so many, but I guess I'll start with one of my fourth graders from last year. She was a real firecracker. And when she couldn't get a grasp of something, she would immediately shut down in tears and everything. So it was working with her and trying to figure out, how can I catch her before the tears start? So I would try to stay within like arm's length of her when she's doing her work independently, because we'll start with group work and then they'll have a couple of problems that they'll have to work on their own. So I would just try to stay like within earshot of her, or to hear, like what she's doing. So it got to the point where I could tell like right away, and I would be like, okay, what do we do? And she'd be like, take a breath. And now I can start. And so it was just getting them to get into the repetition of doing that every time, because repetition is key for children. The more they practice it, the more they do it over and over again, the more ingrained it is in their mind that, hey, I can do this instead of blowing up every single time.
That's learning.
So yeah, she became like one of the leaders of the classroom. She ended up being able to like make the afternoon announcements, because she would have less outbursts. So she went from many outbursts per day to almost none per day. And so I'm very, very excited with the growth that she had over the school year. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Let's look ahead to the future. And this will be our last question. You good with that? Okay. Sure. Let's look ahead to the future. Let's think about education as a whole, and let's think about literacy as part of that. You can answer this question as education as a whole or with a focus on literacy. It's up to you. What changes do you hope to see in schools or in the literacy landscape? And how would that or those changes benefit the people that you serve on a day-to-day basis?
Wow, that's a lot. It's so many different things that would need to take place or have to take place. Making sure the school has adequate funding, because you never have enough funding. So it's like, how do you work with what you got? And just trying to find the best solutions. And sometimes it's hard finding those solutions, because it's like Johnny may need a little bit more help than Julie, but I don't have that extra 30 minutes to work with him. So it's like, how do I find the time to work with him? So sometimes I would be like, well, during breakfast, when they come in, I'm gonna work with him real quick for like 10 minutes or so, and then just breaking it up into chunks. Because, you know, kids don't like to sit there for long periods of time doing anything. But if you break it into smaller chunks, then they're able to stay focused for that amount of time that you want them to. Finding programs that kids like. Not everybody is a one-size-fits-all type program for kids. You have some kids who would rather have pen and paper and be able to write it down versus doing everything on the computer, because some kids aren't. But it seems like they're not as tech savvy, but they sure know how to change that wallpaper and stuff like that. But it's like, I need you to get on this program, and I don't know how to get there. And it's like, but, okay. So that I really think it's just finding stuff that the kids are interested in, and bringing that focus toward them and incorporating that into the literacy. Okay, you like this rapper? Okay, let's do a report on that rapper, find out some information, being able to do research and know how to do the research, and then being able to write a paper about that. What did you learn about this person? Why did you pick this person? And being able to articulate that type of information to their audience. And just, I wish we could have specific funding for school, like people in charge who understand that teachers need money and funds to be able to teach these kids successfully, instead of just being like, okay, here go a nickel, make it work. You know, it's like, how am I supposed to do that? And then you give me so many kids, it's like a smaller class size will also be beneficial, instead of cramming tons and tons of kids in a classroom, because then you can't really get to those kids that really need that extra help, because you have so many. So if we could work a way where we could get smaller class sizes, more funding and programs that kids like, and that's geared toward kids to push them to read and be literate, then that would be fantastic.
And that will specifically impact your students how?
It would impact my students, because then they are engaged and they are willing to put that work in and that effort in to be successful, and which is what we want them to be.
Yes. Well, Ms. Heard, the time has come for us to go ahead and close this out. I really appreciate the robust and inspiring conversation. It is clearly evident to me why you were chosen to be the MESA 2023 and 2024 Teacher of the Year. If you are inspired by Ms. Roxanne Heard's conversation today, and you think that perhaps teaching is the field for you, no matter what field you currently are working in, if you are drawn more and more to the teaching field, just like Ms. Heard was, go ahead and visit the Urban Learning Collaborative website. Visit them at ULC and try to get connected. This has been another episode of UTalks. Stay plugged in for our constant and consistent audience members. Thank you for our new audience members. We appreciate you being part of the experience. Are you looking to take the next step in leadership? Are you looking to grow as a leader? If so, I have the perfect program for you. Leadership Develop You, sponsored by Urban Learning Collaborative, is now accepting applications for its first cohort of leadership development programming. You can find the application and apply at urban-learning.org. Again, that's www.urban-learning.org. We look forward to seeing you in that next cohort.